back into open session. Ms. Blackmer, if you'll lead us in, for being at our special board meeting on Tuesday, I'll let you lead us in a pledge of allegiance. Okay, and let the record reflect that Ms. Leland has joined us, so all board members are in attendance. Announcements of actions taken in closed session. Closed session item number 1, info was received and direction was given. Number 2, Government Code Section 54957, public employee discipline dismissal release. The board met in closed session to discuss Government Code Section 54957, public employee discipline dismissal release, with a roll call vote of 5 yeses and 0 nos. The board adopted Resolution 1314-14, adopting the arbitrator's advisory decision dated January 16, 2014, confirming there exists cause for termination of a permanent classified employee from the position of lead operations technician. The board also met in closed session to discuss Government Code Section 54957, public employee discipline dismissal release. With a roll call vote of 5 yeses and 0 nos, the board adopted Resolution 1314-15, releasing 20 temporary employees to take effect the last contracted day of the 2013-2014 school year. The board met in closed session to discuss Government Code Section 54957, public employee discipline dismissal release. With a roll call vote of 5 yeses and 0 nos, the board adopted Resolution 1314-16, authorizing the superintendent or his designee to bring charges for cause for dismissal against a permanent classified employee from a position of administrative secretary 2. Number 3, Government Code Section 54957, public employee performance evaluation, assistant superintendent, business services, ed services, and human resources. Information was received and direction was given. Government Code Section 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators, APNs listed on the agenda. Information was received and direction was given. Okay, that moves us on to communications and celebrations. So I will start down to my left with Ms. Leland. Oh my gosh, it's getting so late. I thought we were on to board comments already, trying to speed us up. So I'll move this. We don't have any, correct, tonight?
Not at this time.
Okay. So we'll go to student board.
I can comment on a celebration.
There you go. Go.
If you would like me to, and I don't know if we're going to be talking about it later in the board meeting, but I just want to give a shout out again to Elkhorn. Their mathletes, I think that's such a cute term, but it is about their MESA program that won first place in the area MESA competition, and I had a chance to congratulate Mr. Forsman and Mr. Anselmo Marin at Science Night the other night, just telling them what a great job they did. And of course, humble as they are, they gave all the credit to the students that worked so hard to win this competition with MESA. So really proud of them, and I think it's cause for celebration to see our schools involved in such high-level competition and coming in first place. So it was a good thing.
And I will follow that up with a celebration of Miss Kirby Gonzalez, brand new little baby girl that's with us in our audience. We all got to meet her on Tuesday, so it's a fantastic celebration to have, and congratulations. Okay, so on to student board member report. Waited so patiently for it.
Hello, everyone. Okay. At our high school campus, our Battle of the Sexes rally is almost here. Next week, we'll begin our Spirit Day on Monday, March 3rd, starting it off with Bum Day, which means students will dress in their comfiest casual clothes. Our second Spirit Day is Twisted Tuesday, which means that girls will dress as boys and boys will dress as girls. That would be really fun. Next will be Wacky Workout Day, so students will come dressed in their wackiest workout attire. After that, we will have Throwback Thursday, and students will dress in clothes that were in high fashion from the 50s to the 80s. And last but not least, Friday will be our Battle of the Sexes, so all male students will come dressed all out in blue, and girls will come dressed all out in pink. The rally will begin during our 4th period and will include all sorts of fun games and dance performances, and the winners of the rally will not be announced until the following Monday that we go back to school. On sports news, our boys basketball team sadly lost by 1 point in their first playoffs game against Granite Bay. They had a great game last night, though, and the student body can agree that they played a fine season. Our girls soccer team will be playing in their very own home tournament tomorrow, which will last in through Saturday. Hopefully our girls can win us the first place trophy. On a separate note, I would like to thank Superintendent Gilliland for providing me with the opportunity to attend the California Association of Student Councils Conference for the Student Advisory Board on Legislation and Education. That was long. For 3 days and 2 nights, I got the chance to collaborate with students from across California who lived in cities such as San Diego, Los Angeles, Santa Rosa, Fairfield, Huntington Beach, Redding, and many more. During this conference, all of us were split up into separate groups based on what interests we had in changing our school system. My group was based around school climate and trying to figure out, trying to find solutions as to how we can measure school culture and find out whether or not students feel comfortable in their own schools. For the first 2 days, my group worked on a proposal that was then presented to the State Board of Education yesterday morning. Our proposal asked to have a survey that would be sent to every school in our state that would question students on multiple things, such as if they were bullied, how comfortable do they feel with their peers and administration, and whether they are aware of all the resources and help they have available to them on campus. A similar survey would also be administered to the administrative officers of each school to see how comfortable they feel in their schools as well. The feedback of these surveys will stay anonymous, and the data will be used to help schools figure out what they can directly focus on to help their students be successful, keep their focus on schoolwork, and feel comfortable in their environments. It was an honor to meet so many bright students at this conference, and I realized that there are so many kids, just like me, who are fighting for a better education for all students in California. So it was an honor to be there. Thank you so much. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Now on to CSEA report, Ms. Deborah Hearn. Deborah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd just like to congratulate Ms. Kirby with her new baby. And also, I'm not for sure if you guys was aware, but we did lose another classified employee in the custodian area again. Her name was Marianne Virgin. It was a very small ceremony, and she only worked with the district for a few years, but she really loved Riverbank. And so I just kind of wanted to let you know we did lose another one. And one more thing, I am a little concerned right now. We have classified positions that's taking a little long to be filled, and we're kind of concerned about, you know, the length of time that these positions, when they become vacant, is being taken to be filled. Also, I know you guys have already approved 3 management supervisor positions, and we have 3 lead positions that we're waiting to be posted, and they have not been posted yet. And I just wanted to let you guys know we made it very clear that we do not want to see any of our responsibilities, the job descriptions for the lead positions, roll into the management position. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. And we're still waiting to see our lead positions to be posted. Thank you.
Thank you. WTA report, Mr. Don Stoffer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It appears that our negotiations are finishing up and winding down, and I'm very relieved at that. And want to thank everybody who was involved in that process, and hopefully we can get things wrapped up and signed and put to bed in the near future. A perennial issue that always comes up in negotiation, and it's always the most, it gets the most comments on our surveys negotiation. It relates to safety. And just kind of something to think about as we move forward, that think about safety issues as we work on the capital investment plan for the district. You know, there's probably some things that may not cost a whole lot of money that could do things to help protect students and our schools as we move forward. It's that time of year again, and we're going to be having another fundraiser for WTA Scholarship. And I'll get you a flyer that was just put together this afternoon, so I'll email it to all of you on March 13th from 11:30 to 9 p.m. at Big Kahuna in the Southport Shopping Center. There will be a fundraiser, and the way it works is that for everything purchased, 20% of the purchase price goes to the scholarship. So hopefully when I come here at a board meeting that night, everybody here will be eating frozen yogurt.
Do you deliver?
It can be arranged.
Okay.
You just volunteered yourself.
Yeah, afraid so.
I know.
As you know, last week was our Science is Awesome night, and I know I saw a couple of faces there. It was a roaring success. There were over 400 attendees, and so it was a great time was had by all. And hopefully this is something that will continue. It's definitely, kids get excited by it, and exposing them to some of the cool things that science actually gets involved in. And I know our programs at the high school and of course at the K-8 schools as well have been expanding, and I want to continue to do that. It's good for kids and good for our schools. And then finally, just congratulate Mr. Kirby Gonzalez for the new addition to her family, who we've been visiting with tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you. Public comments, I see no blue slips. Board and superintendent comments that I rushed to earlier, but I'll get to now. Does anybody have any board comments or updates?
I do.
Katie Villegas.
I do. Sorry about that. I was trying to look up something on my phone. But a number for you guys. We have a couple things coming up. We had a Yolo County School Boards Association meeting. It was very well attended. We're getting ready for our Excellence in Education Award, and we have some awardees here right in Washington Unified, as we always do. And that is March 17th at Yolo County Office of Education. Tickets are $10, and I hope you guys can come. I am vice president of that association now, so I think I'm responsible for closing remarks. So Adam has to come and introduce the awardees. I also attended a Healthy Youth, Healthy YOLO workshop put on by the YOLO Stewardship Initiative, and it was very fascinating. They had a lot of students present information on kids in Yolo County, and by kids I mean 0 to 25-year-olds. So it was quite fascinating to see how we're doing in that realm. And another Sac State student did the Yolo County Youth Assets, how much money is spent on youth in Yolo County, some preliminary studies on that. And then our librarian is doing it's called Yolaborate, so people can say what they're doing, and I'll log it on to one Yolaborate, and people can work together more easily. And it was quite interesting. They had a youth panel as well. So that was a fun day on Saturday. And then the Yolo County Children's Alliance is having our annual fashion show right here in this building. I just asked Elena, so she's going to be one of our models. But this year our models are not elected officials as we've done before. This year it's foster kids, homeless youth, and kids in youth leadership. So it's really cool. We're having Timothy Westbrook, who was a designer on Project Runway. I don't watch that show, but a lot of people know who he is. And Broderick is doing the food for us. So it should be a fun event, and that's April 3rd. And our VITA coalition right here in West Sacramento has, in their first month, have brought over $200,000 back in income taxes for families in West Sacramento. And it's going really well. That's the exact number I was trying to get for you, but it's off and running. So thank you.
I just want to say that I was kind of insulted that they didn't bring back the old lady models this year. You know, so
You can sponsor
really
a kid
good
now.
it's a fun event and really does some great fundraising for the community.
It does.
Thank you, Mary.
Alicia Cruz.
Well, I have to apologize, and probably to Dawn. I was at the science fair, but nobody knew I was, because I was the wizard in the costume with my plasma ball, so nobody knew I was there. But I was there, and it was a great event. And I can let you know, my son is at an elementary school, will be there next year, and he's already excited about it. He was there with me, so it was something good for him to look forward to. Also, the girls at the high school had a basketball game, a playoff game this week too, and they actually won by 1 point. So I don't know if 1 point win, 1 point loss, but they are going to Stockton next week for the final playoffs.
The girls? Are
Tonight?
playing tonight.
Oh, is
Yeah.
it tonight? Oh, I thought it was next week. Tonight. So I wish them the best. And I don't think we didn't have a 2x2 or anything, but and I also congratulate Miss Sarah Kirby Gonzalez on her new one.
You can go for it.
All right. Thank you for the congratulations, and thank you to my parents who are watching my daughter right now in the audience. No committee updates, but I did send everyone an email with the AB 1234, the local ethics training, which elected officials are usually required to take. We're not required to take it on the school board, but given that so many others are, I think it would be a nice thing for us to do. And it takes 2 hours, and it's once every 2 years. And the great thing about it is, I got sidetracked when I started it. You can pause it, and you can come back to it at any time. So know that it's 2 hours, but you can do those over the course of a period of time. I just sent it right before the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I just
You
came
isn't that
to.
attentive on your emails? Come on.
And then looking forward to Read Across America event next week and reading at Westfield Elementary School, which I'm excited about.
That's good. I know I do that AB 1, 2, 3, 4, the ethics training through the state, so I get all kinds of that stuff. Ms.
Okay,
Leland?
and I did have a chance to look at it, and thank you for sending it. I think it would be important for us to look at the agenda and content. I think it really addresses conflict of interest really well. I think some things do pertain to other types of public officials, and I was thinking maybe we could look at CSBA and see if they have something comparable for just school boards, but it would not hurt us to look at that and do it just for the conflict of interest part of it that applies to our work. So thank you for thinking of us with that. And I also want to just thank the staff and all the organization it took to put together the science fair, and I particularly enjoyed the makeup of our illustrious Don Stauffer and just the excitement that he had around his table with all the explosions, the gummy bears that were going up. But what I was most impressed about is later, as the evening got later, there was still so many students hanging out and engaged and asking questions. And so I was just very impressed with that, just the level of engagement of students. And then I also thought that our partnerships with the University of California, Davis was phenomenal. There were so many booths and different types of programs at Davis that were there. I think they sort of monopolized, I don't know, as far as the universities and colleges, they were really supporting us in force. And so I want to thank our partner, UC Davis, for coming out and helping our kids get excited about science. I also had a chance on Friday morning to attend the Convergence Conference with our staff. I think Ms. Campbell, is that you were there, and Ms. Niemer and superintendent, and we also had a student that won a scholarship at that conference. But it's excited that we're involved in Next Ed, that we're positioning ourselves for some major initiatives in the future, and just to be at the table and be a part of that conference in a full ballroom downtown Sacramento. It was really great to be WSD at that conference, and I'm looking forward to reading next week too. I think I'm reading on Tuesday morning at Westfield, so that'll be a fun experience.
Excellent. I don't have any committee updates as of now, but I don't want to forget the superintendent like I often do. So Superintendent Gillen.
Rarely, but thank you, Mr. Menke. I just wanted to reiterate what's already been said, but there are a number of opportunities next week as we celebrate literacy and reading across America, Dr. Seuss's birthday, one of my favorites. I guess that's really what inspired me for reading many, many years ago. But at Westfield, there's an evening opportunity for those of you that can't break away during the day, and that is, in fact, next Wednesday, starting at 5:30 at Westfield. If you want to be part of the literacy program, you may be able to do that Wednesday night. So I wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. Because I think the literacy thing is a very important piece to our schools and what's going on. So I know I may not be able to make the Tuesday morning, but I'll probably try to make the Westfield at 5:30 on Wednesday. On Monday? Okay. 8:30 a.m.? Ugh, my work will not allow. So I will try to be the 5:30. Any board governance discussions? Anyone? No? Information discussion items. We're going to information on Common Core, state standards, and smarter balanced assessments. Mr. Gilland.
Thank you. We do, in fact, have two discussion information items this evening. The first one up would be Common Core state standards and smarter balanced assessments. This aligns directly with a strategic priority to support Common Core towards college and career pathways. It's an exciting opportunity for staff to get forward and talk about Common Core and our efforts, and it's also our premier performance by Lynette Campbell, our new Director of Curriculum Instruction. So we're pleased that you're here, Lynette. Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Campbell, from the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spalding. We'll now move on.
That was the fastest presentation, you
When you plug in the cable, it tends to help. Good evening, President Menke, members of the board, Dr. Gilliland. Thank you very much, and I was very excited to be able to have Lynette finally come up, and I think a number of you know her, but to have you have the opportunity to meet her as our new Director of Instruction. She is phenomenal and very knowledgeable, and so we're just really excited. We have a good team. We have a really good team. So we want to kind of get started, and I wanted to address the priority, the strategic priority around Common Core. But we'll probably spend a good deal of the presentation this evening talking about the Smarter Balance assessment. There's the field test that's coming, and I'm sure you've been hearing a lot about it. And there's been a lot of preparation that's been going on in our office. Lynette has been leading the way on that. Kim Harrison, our new coordinator of instructional technology, has also been a key player in that. And we've got a lot of efforts going on at the school site. So we want to talk to you a little bit about that. And Lynette has studied it very closely. She's quite the connoisseur of assessments and authentic assessments. And she's going to take you through a little bit of kind of before and after picture, what STAR did and what Smarter Balance promises. So we'll spend a little time on that. And this is where it is supposed to switch over. Maybe we go to the old-fashioned. There we go. Okay. We'll go to Microsoft Windows. So anyways, so we just, as a reminder, the strategy and components for implementation, that you have seen a 5-year master plan for implementation. That's something that we started with our previous Director of Instruction, something we've been at for a while. And we use a model that has designated leads. We actually have teacher leads who have been with this process longest, leads at every grade level, leads for every subject area, for every school. So what we really do is we build on a model where there's teacher leadership, teacher expertise at every school to kind of lead the way. We have comprehensive training, which we'll talk about in a few minutes in terms of how much training we've actually done. It's quite extensive. And then there's a Common Core task force and subcommittees. We've had a Common Core committee for some time now, but we've gone through a process with our association to really look at what that should look like and what the structure ought to be. And Dawn alluded to it, I believe, in our last meeting. We'd come to some agreements on how that would be. And it's a very strong structure and one that really counts on teacher leadership, that has teachers taking on, teacher leaders taking on not just the whole Common Core, but aspects of the Common Core expenses and aspects of of how Common Core implementation goes. So I think we've got a good model that we've put together. This is what it looks like. It's kind of hard for you to see, but you rest assured you have the printouts. It's something you can look at later. But basically the model is that there's a larger Common Core task force. There are teachers on that. There are some administrators on that. But in our Common Core system, teachers make up the majority. And then from that task force, there are 3 subcommittees. And so members of that task force are members of those subcommittees. We're using the number 9 and talking about 3 on each, but I think it's going to be a little larger than that. But not so large that it's not that it's unwieldy. They've been doing quite a bit of work. I think a lot of the leadership that we're going to see in this new Common Core task force after our agreement is going to be very consistent with the membership we've had all along. So there's a great deal of built-in expertise there, and we're very pleased. I think we're going to be able to move forward, continue to move forward with a lot of engagement from our teacher leaders. Training by the numbers, and I give you just some broad numbers. We went through and did some fast calculations, but wanted to kind of give you an idea of what we've logged in so far. 520 total hours of training to date on Common Core, 99 total days of training to date, 846 teachers in training. And you're going to look at me and you're going to say, Bill, we don't have 846 teachers. We only have 400 teachers. So I want you to think about McDonald's, where it says billions and billions served. There are teachers who have participated in a number of the trainings, but I want to kind of give you a sense of the participants, how much training there's actually been. 29 different training titles, and 17 Washington Unified School District teachers who are also assisting us in providing the training. You know that we've had training coming to us from our UC Davis math project partners and from our Sacramento County Office of Education folks, but we're also setting up a number of training with in-house people and folks who have learned a lot about Common Core and are leading in that area and able to provide training and support to their peers. We have a number of different content areas, and I say content includes, this is not an exhaustive list. There are several different topics, but I wanted to just give you a sense of what we're looking at. Things that, key shifts is kind of where we all start. What's different about our Common Core standards than what we've seen before? Math modeling, instructional planning in math, that's been a real focus. How do we plan those lessons? Disciplinary literacy. Those of you who have a little bit of background with the English language arts piece, you've probably heard a lot about close reading, a lot of work that we're doing in close reading. Read like a detective is my little poster that we have there. But that idea that we are reading in a completely different way when we're doing Common Core. We're looking for the evidence, we're looking for what the text says, and we're able to make, students are able to make assumptions and build cases and build arguments based on evidence-based reading and looking very closely at what's being said. And this is where I think I'm going to turn this over to you, Lynette, to talk a little bit about our assessments. Thanks.
Thank you. As you know, assessments are changing substantially because to measure the depth of understanding that the Common Core standards will require of all learners will take a different way of testing. And I have found recently in talking with parents about the differences in the standards, one of the best illustrations is to talk about what the new measures of learning reveal about the standards. And so we'll talk a bit about what are the assessments this year and what do they sort of look like. So the purple strand are the computer-based Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium assessments. And as you know, California is one of 22 states that are using Smarter Balance or SBAC, and we're a key player in that. Those alone have taken a tremendous amount of teamwork to get ready for. We have all the scheduling. If you can imagine a school site getting all 3rd through 8th graders through the 1 or 2 computer labs they may have in a timely basis during the window we have open for getting through 3 different types of assessments. We started scheduling quite some time ago. We're training the test site coordinators as we get closer to the tests. There's constantly new information coming from ETS and California TAC, offering new resources for training, and we are rolling those out in what we trust is a timely basis. But there are other assessments we also have to do, and those are all the paper-based leftover STAR assessments or retained STAR assessments in science particularly, and of course in the special education field to make sure we monitor their progress. So it's a full plate. But let's take a look at some contrasts here. One thing is this will all be given on computers for the Smarter Balance. And if I say SBAC, I apologize, it just flows a bit faster. There are skills that our kids need to have, and we are working on a comprehensive plan to give them better skills year by year. But this particular year, the way we are preparing them not to be thrown by having an assessment on computer is having them all do practice tests. So it's not to practice a test, but to be comfortable with being at a computer for an assessment. And so it's the familiarity piece. Now, let's look at what they used to do, and we'll compare it to what they're going to now do. This is a released item from STAR. This is a STAR question that was designed to assess using contextual clues to discern meaning of an unknown word. This was the STAR test measure of that knowledge. I think if you look at it, you'll see that other strategies could be used to get the right answer that may not actually involve knowing how to use contextual clues to discern meaning. This will be a Smarter Balance release question. This is a practice test question from their website. Here the prompt is read the sentences in the passage, then answer the question. You answer the question by clicking on 2 phrases from which you drew the contextual clues to discern the meaning. This is a completely different measure of a depth of knowledge. Let's take a look a bit at math. This was what we called the old 8th grade algebra course. This was assessing being able to discern the missing value in an inequality. And again, I think you'll see there are strategies that could be used that would not necessarily show you if a learner had really understood how to do that. These aren't inequalities, these are equations. This is an SBAC question. There they are. Which ones have no solution? Which ones have one solution? Which ones have infinitely many solutions? No, let's choose C. Here, this involves testing the correlation between an equation and a line and recognizing negative, positive slope. This would be a performance task from the SBAC for a similar thing, only you get a set of data. You need to determine the line of best fit, and you'll see a little scroll bar somewhere off to the side. This is the beginning of a longer performance task where they not only find the less of best fit, they develop the equation that goes with it. They justify why that equation is actually legitimate and what does it mean in context. Now, the practice test, there's a training test, there's a practice test in 3 areas for grades 3 through 8 and grade 11. The public is invited to go on this website and take any of these tests. You log in as a guest. You could all take an infinite number of tests. Well, not quite infinite. You do the permutation. But you can take a substantial number of tests, and you're encouraged to do so. The one caveat, you really have to use Chrome or Firefox or Safari. Internet Explorer will not function correctly. And we have our frequently asked questions on our website. A year ago, we asked all of the teachers K through 8, what is your most burning question when you hear the term Common Core? From that, we compiled our own authentic frequently asked questions, and our teachers on special assignment put together all of the answers and embedded links that would take people to sites that would be constantly updated. So if we go to our own website, there are 3 entry points: parents, staff, and department. And this is a page you would get to by being a parent who clicked on Common Core questions, and all of those questions are listed there, hyperlinked to answers and other hyperlinks that will take you to current information.
Lynette and I had debated about whether we should assign homework to have everybody go home and take a Smarter Balance test. But I figured you might want to do that anyways. We're going to also, we're going to work with Kim on adding some other hyperlinks out from this site. There are some great things. I was at the CIS conference last week, and there's been some updates to the Achieve the Core website. There are a number of outside entities that have done a very, very nice job with giving a whole set of resources and lots of things that teachers can access, parents, and the community. That's one of the advantages of the Common Core, is because it is state to state. So many states are involved. You know, there are things that have been developed everywhere, and so there's lots more that's available in the Common Core than there would have been if it had only been a California set of adopted standards. Any questions?
Thank you so much both for your presentations. It's excellent to hear and learn about. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Thank you. I appreciate your presentation, and it's nice to meet you, formerly Lynette, too. So thank you for that. And I'm happy to hear about SCOE, the math project in-house. Those are all really great. Great opportunities, I think, for people. And I'm wondering, your question and answer that you put on the website looks great. I can't wait to go and look at it. Is it on the school websites as well? Is there a link on school sites? Because I haven't seen it yet. So I'm just wondering how people get to it. Is it only through the main district site, or is it through?
I think at the moment it's on the main district site, but I can
Okay.
go back and check that, and we can probably hyperlink that
Maybe
pretty
add
easily
it.
to all the sites. That's a good point.
Add it to the
That's a
others
very
as
good
well.
point.
Okay, great. And then just as a caveat that I'd like to say just for all of us for awareness is my only worry with when we talk about Common Core is the assessment piece, and we all know that really good teaching is assessed constantly. There's always formative and informative assessment, and I still worry as we look at how Smarter Balance folks are getting very rich that we might end up in kind of this place again where we really weigh heavily one test. And so I just want to reiterate, which I've said before to the board, is that this is graded by a computer. The writing is also graded by a computer. So we just need to be cognizant, I think, of that. And my only other thing to add is in terms of I saw management of Common Core classrooms on there as an important piece. And I hope that with management that we know that sometimes it's going to look really messy, especially at the
That's the
beginning.
point.
Exactly. Yeah. And the listening and speaking we want kids to do, they're not going to necessarily be able to do it right away. And so I think to give some flexibility to everyone, teachers, students too, in this process, because it will look messy when you go and visit a classroom. They won't be sitting in rows and regurgitating information. There are going to be some steps with it. So thank you for that.
Alicia Cruz? No? Well, again, thank you for your presentation. I had a couple questions, but I did love the website, and I think it's actually a great suggestion to put that, I mean, what is Common Core button on the websites, not only the schools, but even our district website, because I think a lot of parents will have that, what is Common Core? And it starts early on. I mean, I'm a kindergarten teacher, and the first day of back to school, and she was explaining it the best as she could and what the parents were going to see in the coming years, because you don't get it really right away in kindergarten, but that transition, that change, and that was very difficult to understand and for her to explain to us at times. So there's a big question mark, because when you say change and you're talking a big change like that, the first question in the parent's mind is, how does that affect my child? How do I help my child? So it causes a lot of anxiety for parents. So that website, getting connected to that, even having teachers talk about that with their parents, can really help facilitate those angsts about what's going to happen in the coming years with their children. And I have 2 older boys that are about to graduate high school, and the hardest thing with the STAR testing and just curriculum in general was the comprehension piece. Trying to get them extra material to really read, not just read. I mean, I read when I was that age, and I just read. Oh, I read it, finished and done. But it's to comprehend, and I didn't learn that skill till much, much later in college, to really read a text and really fully comprehend what that message is really telling me, and so I could really get in a deep thought and think about what the meaning is and what's really going on. So, it looks by the tests, I mean, those are pretty intense, some of those questions. So with that, my first question when I saw that, the paragraphs and even the math, I mean, I'm math-minded, and I was like, whoa, I don't know if I could, I'm probably afraid to take the test. I don't want to, as long as I can go on there and you guys don't get the results of my test, I think would be okay. But, so are these tests timed for children? So it's kind of open-ended? Can they sit there for hours on end? How long are these tests? I guess is a good question. So, but if you can break it to me for English and math, like how long would an average child take to pass or to take a test?
Yeah, they're telling us to estimate 3.5 hours for 3 components. One is an English language arts component, one is mathematics component, and one is a performance task in either ELA or math. So for those 3, they estimate 3.5 hours, but it is quite technically completely untimed. And there are protocols for how you would perhaps have to close a lab with a child who's unfinished, how you would suspend their test, escort them to some other place, and give them all the time they needed to finish.
Okay. Because I didn't even know with the professional engineering license, they switched over and implemented a computer-based testing as well. And a lot of the feedback, I guess, what they're getting is it's very difficult. It's a big difference. It's a big change. So it takes more time to really think about what's on your computer screen, do the math, and then navigate through that testing system. So I think from what you guys are saying that's happening ongoing and more computer time, and I hope as a board we can facilitate more computers, more labs, more time, because I think that's going to be a huge part going forward, not just in the early stages. I think it's going to be a part early stages, but it's going to be really robust in what happens with computer labs and time and having tablets for technology and different things. But for you guys, what have been some of the other challenges for you guys when trying to roll this out? What have been the biggest challenges you faced doing it?
We've got a list. Well, the first thing I want to talk about, too, is what Lynetta talked about is what we're seeing in terms of the field test for the 3.5 hours. But we expect to see that grow. That's the kind of our first, they're truncating those tests this year because it is a field test. But what we'll see in future years will be longer. The major thing, I think, is the concern about just making sure that we can get all the students through, what we have in terms of the technology. We believe that that's possible this year, and we've done some stress tests. But this is a plane that's, overused metaphor. It's a plane that's being constructed in flight. And so what we see a lot of times, Lynette and I kind of commiserate about this a little bit, is we're kind of getting news on this all the time. And, remember what we told you last Thursday? Well, we actually changed our minds. We're doing this. Is, coming from the testing folks. So it's a matter of kind of keeping up with that and then communicating that out to all the people who will be giving the test. So we're just trying to keep those lines of communication open and keep people updated as much as we can. But some information has come lately,
Yes. Around 2 o'clock this afternoon, there was new information. Yeah. So exactly right. I will say, because you brought up some very real concerns, one of the strengths of the Smarter Balance assessment is they are completely transparent in how they develop their questions. And they actually offer trainings, which your teachers on a special assignment have all had. And we are sharing that information with teachers so that there's no surprises about how it was constructed or how you might use that information to construct your own formative assessments so that you wouldn't have those surprises. So that's helpful too, and that's been another part of it, is demystifying what the Smarter Balance assessments are about. And making sure that as many people as possible are very comfortable with all the new terminology and the new designs. So that's been going on over here while the computer stuff has been going on over here.
Right.
Yeah.
How many teachers on assignment do we have now for our K-8s and even high school?
We are down to 2 and an open position for some reason.
And how many would you realistically would like? And I know we would like 100 out there on the ground doing the things we want to do. And
Scott listening?
Scott is listening because he said he'll never, but so for you, how many would you actually like to see out there realistically?
Loaded question. Here's what I look at. We just went through successful bits of review, and when we looked at documents of what we had at one time, it talked about 6 TOSAs at one time. And that was in a time where we were, there was also a lot of reform at that time in terms of, implementing English language arts standards, California standards, and math standards. But I'm thinking in terms of the heavy lifting that really needs to be done to implement these set of Common Core standards, which are pretty radically different than what we've seen, and the assessments, and new standards that are coming in terms of the new generation science standards, next generation, sorry, and ELD. So I think we're going to be probably coming back with, and talking to Scott about, how do we right size and be ready to do the work that needs to be done. So.
I think the board's interest is to really roll this out and to really be on top of what happens, and not just to get it up and going, but to really maintain and coach teachers to do better and to grow this whole thing. And I appreciate your candor, because I know that was a loaded question, obviously, but I think it's instructive to the board to hear that sometimes of what we'd actually want to see, and then it's our job to really see if we can make that happen and get those resources that you need to facilitate your work and to do the best job for teachers out there. So I appreciate it. Unless there's anything else from the board, thank you very much. And nice meeting you finally. So I will see you guys soon. Thank you. Are you staying up there, Bill, for the next the next go around? That's number 2, English learner update, and it's a performance indicator.
We have Julie Hoskins back for command performance tonight to talk about English learners. This is what we typically do about this time of year. It's one of our performance indicators, how our English learners doing, and we have some data as to that. And one of the things too that Julie's been working very hard with and on and with me and with Scott and with Kylie is on developing the LCAP. And the LCAP and the LCFF, as you know, is the funding and the plan. That's to kind of take all this unrestricted fund and to make it work on behalf of kids, but particularly with our supplemental concentration grants on behalf of students who are English learners and who are in poverty or foster youth. So I think it's timely to talk a little bit about kind of where are we with our English learners.
Good evening. It's nice to be back again. As you saw with those SBAC assessments, the demands for English learners are increasingly going to be challenging to assess not only those kinds of assessments, or to participate in those kinds of assessments, but to participate in the instruction that's going to get them to where they can successfully do that. So where'd it go? The assessment that they currently take and that we use to measure their development of English proficiency is the CELT, and you're probably all familiar with that now. The CELT has several purposes. We use it to identify students as English learners just when they first come to us, but we also use it to kind of determine at what level they are with their English proficiency, and also to monitor their progress and determine it's one of the factors we use to determine that they've reached proficiency in English and are ready to be reclassified. Because we're in this transition time, it's a little challenging. The CELT is based on the previous ELD standards, and so it's still connected to the old domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing that are not the way the new ELD standards are organized. So we're going to be seeing a transition over time. But Currently, we'll still be doing the CELT, and the listening and speaking portions of the tests are done individually. So this is individual student information, how students are able to understand and produce language. And then there are also group portions of reading and writing. Every year, we have a federal accountability measure for our English learners that uses the CELT assessments. And so that's kind of one of the things we want to report on you tonight is how we did with that. And those are called our AMAOs, because we love our acronyms, our Annual Measurable Achievement Objectives. There are 3 of those. The first 2 use the CELT as their measure, and the kind of good thing about this accountability measure that makes it really different from the way AYP and API played out is that this is actually measuring individual students' progress on a test. So it's match scores, the same student, how they did one year and how they did the next year. So it really is a more valid measure, I think, in a lot of ways. So AMAO 1 is looking at those, how many of those students went up a level on the CELT in a year. AMA 2 is looking at, over time, how many kids actually get to proficiency on the CELT. And AMAO 3 was the academic piece that used AYP for the EL subgroup. So we do have that for this year, but we won't have that one in the future. So here's a little bit, you had in your packet the actual Title III accountability report we get from CDE, but I thought it's kind of more informative for you to see some trends over time. So this has that last 12-13 data that's in our current report, but it also shows you kind of where we've come from. AMAO 1 is always kind of mysterious to us because we have this up and down pattern that we have done, you can see. And if we went back 2 more years, we did it then too. We're always kind of right around the target, but sometimes we dip under, sometimes we go over. And I think maybe it has to do when we've looked at kind of individual kids and how they're doing, it's just that some kids take more than a year, and we kind of have this year when a bunch of kids make it, and then it takes them a little longer to do that second growth spurt. So we keep our eye on that because we really want it to help our kids make that level growth each year. That seems like a reasonable target for them. Then the AMAO 2 that's looking at do we get kids to proficiency gets divided into 2 different cohorts. One is students that have less than 5 years studying English, and then the other is 5 years or more. So our less than 5-year group, you can see, we've been able to kind of get above the target and stay there a little bit higher. So this is the group, they've had less than 5 years with us, so you don't expect a huge number to get to proficiency. So you can see the target is fairly low. The target's only 21.4% of them, and we exceeded that by a little bit. So, we like to see that our kids that are coming to us are making that growth and getting to proficiency. Here's where we get concerned. Our students with 5 or more years, so these are the kids we think of as our long-term English learners. They've been with us 5 or more years, and yet they're still not getting to proficient on the CELT. And you can see we as much of the state of California struggle with this. They get to kind of an intermediate level of proficiency, but never quite get to that proficient status. And as the target has continued to rise, we kind of have stayed right around the same percentage with our students. And so that's been a real focus for us. And here's just quickly the AYP for the EL subgroup. The target, of course, had gone up to 89% this year, and you can see all our students or our EL subgroup, that's a very challenging target for everybody. And of course, this year it would have been 100%. So what's happening with the assessments? We are going to be shifting to a new assessment called LPAC. And that's going to really change how we test. It's going to have a different assessment window. It's going to have 2 separate assessments, one that is the initial screener to identify if kids are English learners, and then a different, more complex assessment that determines how much growth they're making. And it's going to change the window when we do the assessment. Currently, we do it in the fall. It's going to change that to after January. So it's going to be more in the springtime. The reason we're transitioning is we have new ELD standards. Those were adopted a little over a year ago. and the new test by law has to be aligned to the new standards. So we'll continue to administer CELT the way we have been for the next few years, but you can see by 2016-17, the intention is to transition to the new LPAC. But they leave that, contingent on funding and approval by the state board. So we have LPAC and we have LCAP. The LCAP, as you know, is the Local Control Accountability Plan. And that's where we're looking at the supplemental and concentration grant funding that's generated by the English learners and students in poverty and foster youth, and trying to come up with how we're going to increase and improve services for these populations using this supplemental funding. And you can see we have some needs for our English learners in that area. Part of what LCAP requires is that it's actually in the Ed Code that we have data around the percentage of students that make progress towards English proficiency, so some of that same data we've just been looking at. And also now they're including the English learner reclassification rate. That's never been part of our accountability piece directly before. We've always kind of looked at that, but now it's going to be included. And also evidence of implementation of our academic content and performance standards for all, but they particularly call out English learners. So we're going to need good data in that area. So we do have current goals and a plan we've been working from that we brought to you a year or so ago. That was our Title III action plan based on that accountability data that required that we write a plan for how we were going to improve our services for our English learners. So these are the goals we're currently working with, that we're making that progress, annual progress on CELT, getting to proficiency within 6 years, helping students meet grade level standards, and that's that focus we have on our long-term English learners, and then providing the professional development for our teachers, and a piece of that is our implementation of a look at learning, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, and then always making sure we're involving the parents in this process. If you remember a look at learning, we've talked to you about it as part of our Title III action plan. It's really that idea of the continuous cycle of improvement. And how do you actually effectively make change in how you're providing instruction and how you're working with teachers to make sure students are getting the support they need. So we are implementing this to follow this cycle of improvement where you're planning, you're teaching, you're analyzing how that went, then you're reflecting, you're revising, and then starting the process all over again. Some of our schools say, well, no, we really think step number one should be where you analyze, and that, this is a cycle. You start wherever you need to start. If you're looking at your data, figuring out what that means, and then getting your plan, and then teaching. So you can look at it a couple of different ways. But a look at learning asks us, as we're doing that cycle, that we focus on these areas that research tells us make a big difference for our English learners: the learning environment, the planning process, applying the best teaching and learning practices, and using assessment for differentiation. So those are kind of the focus areas that the teachers are looking at as they go through this cycle. So we have 3 schools currently participating in a look at learning: Elkhorn, Riverbank, and Westfield. And we meet together, and then they also do their own site work. So they all are in a little bit different places depending upon their staff and the work and the needs of their kids. Elkhorn has been really focused on objectives. They've done a lot of collaborative planning, a lot of walkthroughs. They've developed some observation tools that they're using and collecting data and revisiting that. And they're just beginning to get into the coaching piece of it, because we know how critical coaching is to helping teachers do the implementation. Riverbank has been doing grade level planning. They've really focused on language production and the content and language objectives, and kind of training teachers on that and getting them used to trying to design language objectives for their kids, because that's kind of a new thing for us, to focus on the language piece, not just the content. And Westfield has really been focused on instructional planning. They've developed also some different walkthrough tools that they've been using as they've gone into classrooms and looking for those real language production opportunities that kids have. And they've really been focused on how do we really get this cycle going? How do we help teachers work their way through all the phases of the cycle? In order in order to provide additional support for a look at learning, we were invited by Central Valley Foundation to apply for a grant. They provide funds to help support districts to provide services to English learners. And so we decided, since this was an initiative we already had going, that that would be the perfect thing to try and get some additional support for. So we did write that grant. We asked for some additional funding to have more collaboration time for the teachers, and also for a TOSA that could help with that facilitation training and coaching that the staffs need to keep this work going. So we submitted that grant in December, and they came out and visited us in January and kind of talked with Dr. Gilliland and Mr. Spalding and myself, and Lisa Smith joined that conversation as well. And we're waiting for the decision. They asked us to respond to some questions. We did that. So hopefully in another couple weeks, we'll know if we are going to be able to benefit from that funding. As I mentioned, we know parents are an important part of the education of their kids, and for English learner parents especially, we want to make sure that they continue to be part of this process. So as part of our LCAP forums and we've been having, we've tried to make sure to include English learner parents in those, and to make sure that the Parent Advisory Committee will have some representation. We continue to implement the Latino Family Literacy Project. We've talked to you about that before. It's offered at Riverbank, Elkhorn, Westfield, and Westmore. And I know a couple of those schools are just getting going right now with new sessions. We did PK again this year in the fall at Riverbank. And we continue to have ELAC and DLAC meetings and trainings. With the change in funding, technically ELAC and DLAC were requirements of our old funding system, but LCAP requires us to continue to engage our English learner parents in this process. So we're going to keep those committees in place and continue to work with English learning parents, both at the site and the district level. So that's kind of a quick summary of some of our efforts in this area for English learners. And now if you have any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I'll turn it over to the board. Any questions or comments?
I actually have a question. Are homeless kids included in the foster care? Do you know?
They're not called out specifically, but certainly they're part of what we would be addressing with the LCAP.
Okay.
The foster youth are called out specifically in the funding process, but homeless would be included in the planning process.
I think it would be through that free and reduced lunch threshold that would really kind of identify, who's in that group.
I just had a quick question. About how many students do you know in total that we have that are English learners? And if we had a trend over time where we have fewer or more in West Sacramento?
Currently, we have about 1,450, somewhere around there. It's about 21% of our student population. And then we have another 21% that are have another language at home, but are also fluent in English. So about 42% of our total population has a home language other than English. The numbers have held pretty steady. We had a little bit of a dip in the number of English learners because we reclassified kids, and so we had growth on the FEP side. So we used to have kind of more EL, fewer FEP, but kind of the same total percentage. So we haven't had huge changes in our overall numbers for a few years.
I was just curious. And then the grant, if we are awarded that in March, how much would that be? And it would really be for the TOSA director or additional coaching? Is that primarily what it's focused on?
What we're requesting is it's about $200,000 a year. And it's a 3-year grant, so it would be a total of about $600,000. Whether they give us the total amount or not, I guess remains to be seen. But that's what we requested. And the funding would go to a TOSA and to the additional collaboration time for teachers to have additional opportunities, so release time for teachers to get together, or to extend their current collaboration time by adding additional extra hours so that we're not having to take them out of class, but once we have them already all together, extending that time that they work together.
Would it be for more than 1 year or
Well, we wrote it as a 3-year grant.
3 year? So it'd be phased in at 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Great job. Thank you for the presentation.
Again, thank you so much. It's a challenge I think we all have and we all face, and I know it's something that the board is really about trying to fix and solve, and I know it's a very tough problem to solve, but I hope that you guys have all the resources you need, and hope that we can help broaden that help.
Yeah.
I think the grant would help out tremendously in getting some support, but I know it's the work of the board to really help raise up those English language learners to do a lot better and to get them into proficiency so they can go on to be successful students and community members eventually at some point. So again, thank you for all the hard work. I know the presentation's a lot of work to put together and to come to us and bring it for us, so thank you so much. Okay, on to Sunshine and Washington Unified School District's bargaining proposal to CSEA for fiscal year 2013-2014. Superintendent Gilland.
This is simply a sunshine of a bargaining proposal for CSEA for 2013-14. That's it.
Is there any questions or comments from the board? Okay. On to action items. Vote for CSBA Delegate Assembly, Region 6, Sub-Region A. I know this is a great opportunity. I know, did you do this at some point? Ms. Leland did? And I think my wife would strangle me if I signed up for anything else at this point. But is any... You want to nominate Mary?
I paid my dues. I did that for many years. I'm still on their email list. I'd like to see somebody. It is a wonderful experience, especially since we're so close to the Capitol, and we don't have to travel for the meetings, and we really get to just have that mentoring sometimes with other school board members and delegates, and they put you to work.
Oh,
But
sure.
it's right here in West Sac, so I would encourage, are you sure one of you wouldn't like to do it? I know Sarah, Katie, any of you would be just excellent in that position.
Is there any interest from the board to be nominated? I'll write your name in quickly. Okay, I won't make it painful. So, with that said, do we have to vote on nothingness?
There is actually an incumbent identified, and
Oh, okay.
the board could, in
correct.
fact, endorse the incumbent,
Or we could write in our own name?
or you could select a candidate that you would want to include as a write-in.
Okay. So can I get a motion to approve the actual person? on-
I'll move to approve the incumbent.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And on to consent agenda items. Is there any request to pull any items on the? Then can I get a
Move
motion?
to approve.
Okay. Can I get a
Second?
And all those in favor to approve consent items, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say no. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. On to future agenda items that support our goals and our priorities.
I was just curious as to when we were going to have the homeless and foster youth presentation that I asked for.
You did? And I haven't talked to you about it? I will talk to you about it.
Okay,
And put
thanks.
that on there, foster. Okay. And can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I second.
All those in favor for adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. No, or no nos. That's it.